if not in fact, some of the effects of my decisions. And they're not just about me. It's not what benefits me. It's not what puts money in my wallet. It's not what is profitable. You know, it's like, it's maybe whether or not I'll have oxygen to breathe 50 years from now.
I think you make a great point about debt, Wayne. And you look at what's happening to the American students, it's happening also to countries, to nations. They go deeply into debt to pay corporations to build infrastructure, to exploit, to do mining, exploitation, etc., even exploration. And then it all works against humanity. Eventually, people become slaves of money. And again, it is not scalable anymore. I mean, look what that's created in Venezuela, for example. Millions of people displaced, and it's happening in Africa as well, with Syria and other countries. And again, in Syria, we were discussing that last night with Kelly. Effectively, the problem originated with the desertification and drought.
Yeah, the problem in Syria to start with was the food bowl was gone.
Yeah.
Same thing in Egypt. We chopped down all the stuff, we created sand, and we see the effect 300 or 400 years later. We see that effect. Debt to me is tantamount to cutting down a tree.
Yeah.
But you know, we even talk about debt and cutting down and all this because we haven't gotten back. I mean, I don't even remember, I don't know if it was 2 or 3 years ago, we discussed about fractals. We talked about Mandelbrot, Benoit.
Yeah.
You remember that?
Yes.
Now, if you are seeing, and you ask today, how do you see the relationship? It's also seeing fractals. But when you start seeing fractals, you're evolving from relatively micro to macro. You get me? So when you cut a tree, how did you see the tree in the whole kind of space that you had? Let's say you are looking at the tree, and you're looking at the tree with its environment, with the ground, and you think about, and it's the same, for example, you're talking about students. If your students are for life today, completely in chains of debt, what is a possible consequence at the global?
Manu, the consequences are compounding momentum.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
It's exactly
at the time,
cutting down the tree, because you don't see the momentum of the destruction. All you see is the trees come down. We've made houses.
Yeah.
We've done all of that, right? But
yeah.
30, 40, 50 years later, we see the destruction of the fertility, the inability to grow a tree. The same thing applies when you get into so much debt. The fertility's gone.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens is now you've got all these students. The fertile minds of the United States, the most creative economy that we've had on this planet, period. We're destroying the fertility of the mind, is what I'm saying. Debt is destroying the fertility of the mind, and it's harnessing us to this belief of money as the ultimate exchange. And it's getting out of the precessional cycles.
Mm-hmm.
The precessional cycles have to be regenerative.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the problem is we're not regenerative.
That's right. It's because, and I've had a couple things here. I got the relationship between they're measuring time in a billionth of a second. I just want to say this about the speed of light. The speed of light is 1 year, 186,000 miles per second. That's how far the speed of light travels in a year. So if you want to relate that to the micro, you just have to, if the smallest unit of time is 9 billionths of a second, then all you have to do is divide 186,000 by 9 billion. You know how far light travels in that measurement of time. So I want to resolve that.
Steve. That's
as we measure. I want to resolve that and put it aside, because I think the right question is the precessional thing. when the student doesn't choose to get into debt. That was a burden that was given him by the system. The system is not processional. The system doesn't look at the relationship of things and how the universe expands evenly, and how the universe expands giving and taking and allowing space and respect for everything in the space. It's a few guys who have figured out a way to control all the money, and that's what they're doing. And so they bring up these little kids. The kids come in. We're all burdened with this system that is not community. It's not processional. And that's the issue. And I think that, you know, it's like cybernetics. Back in the day, the rich guys invented computers to control the world, and computers have come back and bit them in the butt. And although they're still controlling the world with their super fast computers, this technology is gradually empowering everybody. And one day, we're going to stop thinking in terms of vertical growth. We're going to start thinking in terms of horizontal relationships. That's this processional thing. And although I'm fairly discouraged because I don't see the rich guys giving up their money, I think that I have a friend who's a Utah guy who just threw everything away. Well, he's thrown everything out the window and just gone to France to be a yellow vest guy. He thinks that democracy is the way to go. And to me, those guys are in the street protesting this vertical, you know, quarterly profits. They want to see a world that's more democratic. Well, I think it's a matter of, there's another solution, and it's not fighting thing. I hated at the end of Reffer's video there, it's, we've got to fight for this. We've got to fight. Now we got to stop fighting. We've got to start loving. We've got to start sharing. We've got to start thinking about community. We've got to start thinking about processional reality and come out of this vertical, I'm going to get rich and then I'm going to solve the world's problems. That is so much bullshit. Okay, I'm going to rest right now. Thank you for listening.
just put the stick in the beehive, right?
I want
Steve,
to try to tell you. Go ahead.
Peace or fighting. I think this is a fair point. When you look at what young people are doing today, I mean, led by this Greta girl from Sweden, I mean, they're fighting peacefully, but they're fighting. So again, it depends on your definition of fight. When it comes to fighting with weapons and, you know, the Trump way, I mean, that's plain stupid. I mean, that's not going to take us anywhere. But to take a stand and to try to make a difference, I mean, that's going to require a lot of effort on our part. Because again, the people controlling the economy and doing what they're doing today, they're not going to give up the privileges or the power easily. But again, as Becky was saying, an individual can make a huge difference. And with technology, we can do that. So again, I agree with you. It's how we define what sort of fight we're talking about. I don't believe in a violent fight, but I do believe in fighting.
But what if we considered that it's in all cases it's pollution? And if you take Fuller's definition of pollution, his definition of pollution is particles out of place.
Yeah.
He doesn't. It's not a good or bad, right or wrong. It's like in what we're doing, and Manu's got interfluence, and I guess that's why they devised the word maybe 30 years ago, confluence. It's things flowing into the same streams and the effects of them flowing into the same streams with the boundaries, wouldn't you say, Manu?
Yeah, I was just saying that what I mean by interference is you know, I mean, at first, you know, I don't know if you saw my chat here.
I've got it up on the screen for me, yes.
Okay. I say the boundary is prerequisite of any system, on anybody. You need boundaries. Okay. So you have boundaries, and I say also feedback loops is like a bloodstream of the dynamics of interferences between bodies. And precession then will be when that dance, when those influences are in harmonics, like the rotation of planets around the sun, like the moon and earth.
I don't think Steve's the only one who's sticking a stick in the beehive. My head's buzzing. Backtracking just a little bit, Kelly, you talked about cycles, and I read a book a long time ago called Cycles. I was trading commodities at the time, and he was talking about the Kondratief wave and the Fibonacci wave, and all of these different cycles that affect many things on a major scale. And so I know that there are these rhythms to life. There are these cycles. Some are visible, some are invisible. Some we have tools to measure. Others we're just gaining tools to measure. As Bucky says, 99.99% of reality is invisible. And we get all hyped up about the 0.001. But nonetheless, I always try to make practical application of these things. And when I grew up with a friend who we went all the way through school together, starting at elementary school, went to high school together. I didn't grow up in a family that even talked about college, let alone encouraging it. There was surely no provision to pay for college, and it's probably a good thing I didn't know what student loans were. I probably would have borrowed my way into oblivion to get an education. So rather than go to college, I went straight into business at 21. And by the time my friend and I were 25, he had been to dental school, had come out, and let's see, would have been 25. We would have been about 20. No. We would have been about 32 at the time frame I'm talking about. So right about 30 years old. He'd been to school. He paid $400,000 to buy a practice. He was $250,000 in debt. He borrowed $250,000 to buy a house. So this guy was $1 million in debt at age 30 after getting a college education. By age 30, I'd already earned and lost my first $1 million and was rebuilding. And I've never been able to figure out who's better off. I like my choice. Steve, you said these kids didn't have a choice to going into debt. It was handed to them. I don't entirely agree with that. I think everybody has a choice. The system is structured that way without question, but I did not choose to do that. And I don't know if that was smart or not. I paid some heavy prices for not doing it, not having that grounding in the technical side of education. But when I look at Carl and his family, I don't think they're any better off than us. I think he likes his life, but for me, just for me, unlocking the door in that dental office every day and going in there for 8 or 10 hours and crawling around in people's mouths would have been a death sentence. That is not something I would have ever wanted to do for a living, let alone go into it with $1 million in debt I had to pay off by doing that. I'm not putting him down. He's done very well, and I'm happy.
Wayne, when you're talking about that, $1 million in today's world, who cares? When you were a millionaire, when I was a kid, and around the time that you're talking about this guy becoming a dentist, it was almost inconceivable that you could make $1 million in a lifetime. Inconceivable. Yeah. But today, we've got these guys that are billionaires. And that's where the scale is distorting. And I think that when you're talking about the choice that you have, I think I agree with you. I have the same choice. I don't think we have the same choice today because of the scale. So when you're talking about like kids going into debt for $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 today for the university degrees, it's expected. But what's not expected, and you know as well as I do, in the United States, one of the biggest things going on about debt, and one of the biggest fighting things going on with debt, is the fact that universities made promises. And the promises that they made are not being fulfilled because they said you will have a better life if you get this degree.
Exactly.
But now there's not the jobs, there's not the paying jobs, and they're now starting to talk about misrepresentation. Because one of the things about the student debt that is absolutely insidious is their non-forgivable debts.
Yeah.
And when you and I grew up, you could go bankrupt.
That's the hook right there, though. That's where the money guys socked it to the kids, because what they're saying is you're not credit worthy, and because you're not credit worthy, you're never going to have the ability to discharge this. You're going to have to be our slave.
Yes,
really,
and if you're not educated, this is the trap. If you're not educated, you don't get the job. It's a misleading promise. And that's what I'm saying. It's like debt is like cutting down trees, because we're actually taking the fertility out of our beingness. You've said it yourself. You're now creating slaves.
Yeah.
And when
slavery is the issue.
What's that?
Slavery is the issue.
Yes.
But I believe we have choice. I know we have choice. The question is, are we aware of that choice? You know, when my kids were coming up behind me, the older ones, and started asking me, Dad, what do you think I should do? And, you know, how do I prepare? I would tell them, you know, don't become specialists. Don't go straight into a specialty in school. Get a general education and get a broad scope of understanding about what's going on, because the world is changing so fast. You're not going to have one 30-year career like your grandpa did. You're going to have several careers inside of that. You're going to have to train and retrain. So you need to learn and learn to love learning and learn to be good at learning so that you can stay abreast of what's going on. And so I heavily guided them to be good information processors, be able to go through a big batch of information and pull out what is salient to them in their circumstance.
And Wayne, what you're teaching them, Wayne, is precessional thinking. In other words, get in the flow. Tune into what's going on around you and be organically part of that scene. Don't just say, I'm going to be a dentist right now. I mean, if you're called to be a dentist, then be a dentist. But you're inviting them to get in the flow. And that's the organic thing that's lost. Most people don't realize they can just choose to get in the flow. My stepdad used to mock me. He said, Steve, you're either going to be really rich or you're going to be a bum on the street. And if you look at my life today, I'm probably both of those things. I'm really rich and I'm a bum on the frickin' street. I used to say to my stepdad, and by the way, he was head of General Dynamics Astronautics. He put the Atlas missile up in the air and saved us from the Russian threat. The guy was one of the top. He was in the top 3 income salary guys in the United States. He thought he was cool. I said to my stepdad, Dad, if a monkey climbs up a tree and the bananas at the bottom of the tree suck and the bananas in the middle of the tree suck, why climb to the top of that tree? Get out of that tree as fast as you can and get to the other freaking tree. Find a tree that works. And that's how I justified being a rock and roll guy, going to school for 6 years, never graduating, and never having, I think I had an actual job for like 18 months of my life. I've just been a bum on the freaking street doing whatever was in front of me, which was real estate most of the time. Thank goodness. You know.
Well, I don't like you referring to my friend as a bum, but go ahead, I guess.
Okay. But the idea is if I'm a real estate entrepreneur, I'm in the freaking flow. And if I don't stay in the flow, I do not make the money.
Well, see, that comes full circle to me. Anna, you went off mute. Would you like to say something?
I'm actually curious because the difficult choice versus this notion of slavery. I'm interested in your views on how the health insurance and super system in the United States contributes to this entrapment, because it seems to me there's a whole system which is designed or has the effect of making people feel like they don't have a choice because you have to have the job to have the security for your family and your house and your future. And so you have to have the education to get that job and so forth. So it makes that choice of not opting into the job a really risky, scary one for a lot of people. And That's what it looks like from outside the States.
Insurance in America is based on slavery. It's the vertical model. It's about slavery. It's not about. I'm being quiet now. I'm gonna be quiet now.
Well, that's an interesting question, Anna, because as you ask it, I realize it plays heavily into that entrepreneurial experience I had. For most of my early career, say the first 20 years, I really couldn't afford health insurance. We had it from time to time, but it was so ridiculously expensive for an entrepreneur, and the deductibles were so high that it made better sense for me to set the premium aside to cover any out-of-pocket costs for a relatively healthy family. Now, as time went on, my wife went back to teaching school, and we had insurance through the school system. And she loved teaching school. She didn't go to work to get health insurance. She loved teaching school. And so that was a nice benefit. But see, we still have a choice. That those guys are fear mongers too. You know, what if you don't have insurance? And what if you have a catastrophic illness? Well, the truth is, no hospital is going to deny you treatment. If you walk in there to the emergency room, you're going to get treatment. You're going to have a $250,000 bill, and you're going to file bankruptcy.
Wayne, I don't think you can say that today. I think that was a good statement 10 years ago. I don't think
it's still true here.
I really think that from that perspective, and that's a little bit for me off task, but the reality of it is the way that we've set up. It's come down to debt, tax, and money.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. And the rest
I get that in general, Kelly.
It's to debt, tax, and money.
Put slavery on top of there, and you got it.
I said we're slaves too. Debt, tax, and money.
There you go. I'm a slave to that until I'm not. Until I choose not to be.
Exactly.
You know,
and there's the power.
There's the power. And I think what's happening today with reality and with the new generation, I think that there's a decentralization of resource, and I think we're actually creating virtual tribes, and I think there is this underlying movement that is precessional, that is organic, that is not vertical, that is not part of the system, and it scares the crap out of them. Have you heard that Zuckerberg with Facebook has tried to create cryptocurrency? Have you heard
I don't know how you need to try. Can you
heard about that? Yes.
He's announced they're doing cryptocurrency.
Makes sense. For
He's
Zuckerberg.
making his own freaking money system up. Why not?
Exactly.
And that's not vertical.
I think the power is in the choice. And
what's that?
I said I think the power is in the choice, and I think Bucky foresaw this. He did his very best in his 19, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 language to tell us that the time was coming when we would be interconnected in a lattice network of computer nodes that would allow us to circumvent the power structures.
Yep.
And the internet has done that. And yeah, I think there is power everywhere. I mean, there's this meetup thing that I became part of because of our local real estate exchange meeting, Steve. You know, Chris, the new president, put that on Meetup. So now we get all these notifications for Meetup. It is crazy what people are willing to meet about. It's just.
But Wayne, in real terms, and I don't want to be a battler on this around choice. Precession is not about choice. Precession is about cycles of life. And
it's about flow.
Whether we like it or not. We think we have a choice. And we've got to, at some moment, look at how do we surrender in an exchange sense. We're killing a planet, and we're successfully doing it. We're pretty good at it. Mm-hmm. And processionally, we're being told it's not working. But we're going to say, but we have a choice to save the planet. I don't think we have that choice.
I agree with you. The planet is going to save itself. Yes. And I want to go back to the one thing about the leaf floating in the ocean. And there's a presumption that the leaf is not conscious of itself being in the ocean. And I think I could argue at some kind of a quantum level, the leaf is very conscious about what it's doing, and it's very much part of that organic process. And it's surrendering to the precession of organic existence.
Yeah, it's not a choice. It's an existence.
It's an existence. It's being present to everything that's around me.
True. We're reaching the top of the hour. Well, I think it's time to wrap it up, shall we?
Before we get into the fire, I think so.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Anyway, Kelly, so how are you feeling and what do you take away?
That was directed to me?
Yep.
I think it was a great discussion. I'm with Steve on this thing. I don't think that we are slaves. I think that we have an existence that we become slaves. And I think that for me, debt, taxation, and the money system actually allows us to think we have a choice. We have a choice around that, but I don't actually think we have too many choices precessionally of the workings of the planet. That's how I feel. That's what I take away. Henry, how do you feel? What do you take away?
I'm feeling pretty good. A little confused. Certainly there are choices. I think people do have choices. The younger people can choose whether they do go to university or not go to university. And in fact, university is probably not the destination for a lot of people in the future. If I had a choice, I'd go back and do a trade, make more money that way. if money was the end
Henry, you just declared you had a choice. Go back and do a trade.
Yeah.
You're only a young man.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's always a choice, you know, in that and how you spend your time, space, and energy. But yeah, it was very interesting just to see another different points of view. So thank you very much for that. Anna, how do you feel, and what did you get out of today's discussion? Anna,
Anna, turn on your mic.
You're on mute.
That's much better. I was feeling quiet. I'm feeling invigorated by the discussion. My brain's the most awake it's been for a long time. What do I take away? There's some very powerful ideas. Slavery versus choice. I think there's on different levels. There's different levels of choice. Coming back to the start, this taking away a very strong importance of the connectedness of everything, and coming back to the idea of an optimal size of an enterprise or group being 150, and we were talking about younger people looking for different ways to connect. So the importance of connection with human beings, but with other things as well. And something else I'm taking away is the concept of pollution that we were talking about is particles out of place, but if particles are also waves are out of place, and thinking about the different wavelengths and macro versus micro, there's a lot of very important ideas there that are going around in my head. So yeah, I'm taking a lot away to sleep on. Thank you. Stephen, how do you feel and what are you taking away?
I think, Anna, for being the new kid on the block, you nailed it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna come back and say that if I think I have a choice, I'm a particle. When I realize that I can be in a precessional flow, I become the vibration. I get in the flow. And I think that choice is a freaking illusion. Choice is about ego. There is no freaking choice. And if I think I have a choice, I just particleized myself and I became part of the machine. And when I realized that I'm a vibration existing in a quantum reality, I join the precession and I start to have faith in being who I am. So Anna, I'm going to take what you said and put it on top of what Kelly said and what Manu said and what Refer said and what Henry said. Well, Henry almost said it. He liked having a choice. But Henry, you'll be okay. You'll be okay with that. Manu, how are you? What's up for you today?
Wow. the importance of boundary and me to what they call in probability the bias theorem. That is, I learn, I know what I know what is. Then how do I face my daily final examination? And that is of the utmost importance to me, in that, yes, I know of, I've learned of all these laws, I exchange with guys, but it's still important to me that I set a certain boundary and I become effective with that boundary. So how am I effective where I am? That's what I take from you.
Thank you, Manu. Pass it on.
Rafa.
No, let's go to Wayne.
Wayne.
Is it Wayne?
Yeah, Wayne and
All right.
Henry.
It's you and me in this fight, Henry. It's you and me in this battle. I think what I'm seeing as we approach the end of the call is that it's interesting to me that Rafa is leading the call right now, is leading because of his skills in linguistics, because of his knowledge around language. And on almost every call, I would dare say everyone, but I'm not quite certain, we have wrestled around a single word. The word this morning was choice. And what is choice? And do we have it? And I keep seeing these, and Kelly, you talked about relative speed and the speed of light and decimals. And I'm seeing that it depends on which level we're looking at. It's like looking through a telescope or a microscope. And the more microscopic I look at choice, the more I feel like I have choice. And clearly I do. I mean, I will argue this, I guess. I had a choice to get on this call this morning. I told all of you I wouldn't be here. The wind is 20 knots on the lake. We didn't want to go get chopped up, so I'm home after all this morning. And I noticed what time it was and thought, hey, my buddies are on the call. Do I get on the call or not? Now, nothing processionally pushed me to be on this call. I chose to be here. But when we amplify that and go further out and get bigger and bigger, the less choice I have, because the bigger the influences are that are acting upon me. And whether or not I have a choice, it becomes somewhat insignificant. And I am with Steve in that regard, that it becomes processional. And even with all of my lifetime of exercising all of my wonderful choices, including the choice of not to go to college, I wasn't entirely in control, and a lot of other things took over my education. In that first 5 years in real estate, I made $1 million accidentally. I still don't know how or why. But because I didn't know how or why or where it came from, I lost it rather quickly in the first recession I went through. That's when my education began. And so the icon of precession to me is Bucky's concept of honey money bumbling. The honeybee flying along at a parallel on a horizontal plane, looking for the next flower to get the nectar to make the honey to survive and to live a honeybee's life. All the while not understanding and not being aware of the fact that his legs dangling down, or hers as the case might be, are gathering pollen and sprinkling it on the subsequent landing sites, ensuring reproduction of that plant so that there's honey, that the raw materials for honey next year. It wasn't the bee's intention to be a fertilization machine. It was his intention to be a bee. And I think that precession is always at work, that we make our choices in our little worlds and we do what we think we want to do, and then something else takes over and we have less choice than we thought, and the big picture precession owns us. I love Mahatma Gandhi. He's one of my all-time heroes. And I love that he didn't fight, at least not violently, as Rafa said, that he made a choice to simply say, no, I'm not going to play that game. And I think more and more students and adults and taxpayers and all of us, medical insurance owners, are saying, no, I'm not going to play that game. That game's not going to work. And I think there's great power in that choice, whether it be one of alignment, or if you don't want to call it a choice, if we want to use a different word. Again, we keep getting hung up on words. Choice to me means I can go that direction or this direction. I can do this or that. My experience is that I have those options in many ways every day. But I also know that there are much bigger forces acting upon me, and if I ignore them, I'm going to get steamrolled. So thanks, guys. I'm glad I am here instead of out on the choppy water. Oh, well, this is choppy water. What am I talking about?
Well, it is. And I'm going to argue, Wayne, that you didn't make a choice to be on the call. You came out of your choice. You made an unchoice and got back in the flow. And the wind helped you do it. And if you made a choice, you wouldn't be on here.
Steve, go back to bed. You're all messed up, man.
Pass it to rappers.
Yeah.
Who's Henry?
No,
What's your
it's-
take,
it's-
Robert? How are you feeling at the end of the call?
Well, what about Henry? Henry hasn't gone yet.
Henry went.
yeah, I already made my choice, mate.
Oh, you did? Okay, good.
Yeah,
Okay.
you're last one, rappers.
I'm the last one. Great, thank you. No, I feel great. Actually, I'm glad I survived through this silly cough I've been having for a few days, but I'm feeling better now. And my takeaway is precessional choice to get into the flow of the universe. I think that is what we're talking about, an understanding universe. I mean, again, how we relate, what happens in the biosphere, how we're all connected to universe effectively, from soil, biosphere, life itself is in exchange, and it's all precessional. The fact that we can understand precessional cycles as well, and the fact that we people in this call, we can understand that. Most people are not even aware what precession means. Not even talking about how many people can feel precession. I think it's even fewer people and even are familiar with the concept of precession and connectedness and how we are all together as a species in relation to nature and nature in relation to the universe. So I feel privileged to be part of these calls and to have all of these discussions. And again, we all have a commitment to flow, a commitment to make a difference. I mean, that's why I love to be part of this call. So thank you all for today's call. And I think next week is probably over to Manu, unless you want to do something around language and meaning and words. But we can go again into the world of mathematics. I mean.
Oh.
All right, we'll work it out, Raphael. I've heard what you said. I'll put the word on Manu, don't worry.
Okay, great. Thank you. So again,
You have
very
no
cool.
choice, Manu.
There won't be any choice in the matter. That's exactly right.
Exactly.
Anna, did you enjoy your first call?
I did. It was mind blowing. Thank you, everybody. This is, it's well beyond, above and beyond what I was expecting and exactly what I was hoping to find. So, yeah.
And your particle thing, Anna, would just nailed it for me. I'm taking that away. I'm all excited about choice, focus, particles, and getting in the vibration. I'm loving this quantum field thing you brought up. Thank you.
Wow.
Welcome, Anna.
I'm getting into the flow of the universe. We're here. So that must be, I don't think it was a choice that I was here. So thank you, Henry, for the invitation.
All right, we'll catch you later. Bye-bye.
All good, guys.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Okay.
Cheers.
Bye-bye. Cheers. Bye-bye.